Welcome to Two Dudes, a Table, and a Lot of Bindings. I'm James Beastie. This is Davey Boy here. This is the new Union Force review for 2024. The Union Force got a complete overhaul, and this is called the Union Force now. Next to it is the Union Force Classic, the Force Pro, and then throwing in the Atlas because these have the most overlap in the entire Union line. We put a lot of time on these throughout the winter on a wide variety of boards and compared it against a lot of bindings. I even did same day test with the Union Atlas, the Union Force.
And I rode these bindings with my Burton Ion boots. I think between the three of these bindings, I rode about 80 days this season. And I got them out in a ton of different terrain too, in all different conditions. Everything from the deepest powder of the season to the slushiest summit laps of the year.
For weight, this is 2 pounds with the disc and screws. It's got such a nice, easy twist to it, to the point where you almost don't have to rotate your high backs. When you pull back, there's only a touch give and it's right at the top, but you've got a good cushion throughout this. You compare it to the Team high back, a little different than the Force high back, touch wider, but a similar flex, a little less twist, and maybe just about the same to a touch more give. We go to this one. Oh yeah, the new Force has a little softer high back. This has a lot less give. And then if we take the Atlas, there's a decent twist, but almost no give going back and a little less padding here. I would say this is the stiffest of all three. And what I've found with all of these is none of them really have any kind of legitimate calf bite. And I think that's what's excellent about the Force and most Union bindings, except for their stiffest ones like the Atlas FC.
I don't notice any calf bite on these bindings at all. And I really do on the Classic Force and the Force Pro enjoy this extra lip of padding that you get up around the top rim right here. They don't have that real extra rim of padding.
Yeah, it seems like they moved the wide point down. It has a little more give at the top too. Now, when it comes to flex underfoot and buttering, none of these bindings are the best in Union's line for that. You want the Falcor, you want the Strata, you want the Ultra. Those have a mini disc underneath. They really don't have a lot of contact with the board, but you can still butter and you still have a more natural flex underfoot for a full disc binding. And you compare that to the Atlas, like this rubber padding throughout the bottom, stiffens up the ride just a little bit. When it comes to turn initiation and response, I really didn't notice too much of a difference between the new Force, the 2024 Force, or the Force Classic. I felt like the Atlas had more response in uneven conditions because it's a little more damp of a ride, but overall it feels very similar to the old Force, don't you feel?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I definitely noticed a little bit more response, especially out of the toes on these new Forces compared to the old ones. But this one, you could definitely feel that slight tweak in the padding on the toe. The way it engaged the edge was just a little bit quicker and more in control.
I've always liked Union's slightly sharp response. It really initiates quickly and then continues throughout the turn. When it comes to shock absorption and dampness, in comparison to the Atlas, this is more of a dense rubber padding, which doesn't have as much shock absorption. You're getting more shock absorption with the Force, and it absorbs that, you know, like a flat landing better, but you're getting more dampness, more chatter absorption, more speed from the Atlas. But overall, the shock absorption is still pretty similar with the new Force versus the old Forces.
Yeah, I definitely noticed the difference almost instantly between the how much softer the footbed is on the Force than the Atlas when I put them on.
And when it comes to boot support, you have a new toe strap and a new ankle strap that is very similar to the old one. You're trading a little harder plastic for a little softer plastic on the outside, but still supportive. But then on the inside, you have this kind of like rubbery EVA foam layer that really adds to the comfort. And I noticed the difference coming from my Atlas strap, which is very similar to the Force. All the All Mountain straps have very similar straps. You can ride in all kinds of conditions, uneven snow, off-piste all day, and these will support you. You'll never feel like your boot wants to fold in half and your ankle with it.
Yep.
Union's toe straps are some of the best in the business. I just love the way they conform to almost any boot and really wrap around and hold on to a boot well. I love their ratchets. They haven't changed much over the last few years. The only complaint I have is these ladders used to be stronger and thicker, and they're a little thinner, so it was easier to one hand on and off. Now it sometimes does that. It flexes a little more than it used to, because I used to be able to just slam them on, but overall still very smooth on and off. And whenever you ratchet to the position you're at, the ratchet never pops back up. It always holds. When you get into centering the boot on the binding, and therefore being able to center your binding on the board and you get symmetrical response, there aren't many bindings that are as good as the Force, the Atlas, and all the Union All Mountain bindings, because they've got two things going on here. You can pull the gas pedal out, then you can pull the heel loop in or out to get yourself centered in this binding. That's just exceptional. There are two places here, so you can pop it in and bring it up, or pop it in and bring it out to match your boot size. Then, if you get the boot centered, you can turn this disc sideways and you have all this room to move the screw up and back and slide it to get your proper stance width. If you're a 13 plus, you have a better chance of getting bindings to fit with Union than you do with most other brands. So there's lots of cool things happening here adjustability wise, and I'm so glad they're so thoughtful about all different boot sizes. So which binding should you get? Well, that's a tough question, and it really comes down to personal preference. If you're like Davey, then you're more into the new 2024 Force. You get cushier straps that are more comfortable with the same amount of support. You get a softer high back. You get better toe side response with the new gas pedal redesign, and it gives you an overall more symmetrical response from heel to toe versus the classic Force. But if you're on a budget and you want to save 50 bucks, you're going to get a hell of a binding out of the Force Classic too. Or if you want a little wider, more tweakable Force, you can go with the 2024 Force Classic with the Team Highback in white. And it's very similar to the Force Pro 2023 in the review. Almost the same binding. Lastly, if you're like me and you want a lot of vibration, dampening, chatter, absorption, and you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of shock absorption, the Atlas is a great call as well. And you get a little bit more response.
Overall, I'm always on different boards, different shapes, different conditions. Like I tomahawk all the time. These bindings are just durable and responsive. They're very comfortable, very high performing, and you can beat these up for 200-300 days and they will still keep performing for multiple years.